And so good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to 4 Steps to Building Real Community at Work. Today's presentation is hosted by the Prairie Communicators, which is the North Dakota Professional Communicators Southwest District. We are based in Bismarck. My name is Sarah Mutter, and I'm the Southwest District Chair, and I will be the moderator for today's event. So for those of you who maybe aren't familiar with North Dakota Professional Communicators, our membership is made up of individuals employed in all aspects of communications, employed by businesses, nonprofit organizations, and government agencies. We also have members who are small business owners or freelancers. All of our members are committed to the advancement of the communications professions, the exchange of ideas, and the recognition and encouragement of our organization's membership. So before I turn the screen over to our presenter, I have a couple announcements. So today is what we call a statewide virtual meeting, and Pam just sent me an email message, and yes, Pam, it's on my list. Today is one of our statewide virtual meetings. We rotate through our different districts, taking turns hosting these meetings, so our members have an opportunity to learn from folks from outside their immediate geographic area. Last month, Valley Marcom, our Northeast District, hosted a presentation on artificial intelligence in marketing communications. A recording of that is supposed to be posted to our YouTube channel very soon. So Pam, it's still a work in progress. Okay. So for those of you who might be waiting for that, that is still coming. If you are very much interested in it, like I said, it is coming, and I did ask Nikki to message everyone who had registered for that event. So when it gets online, you should hopefully get a direct email, because I have been checking for it multiple times as well. So you're not the only one. I believe our next statewide virtual meeting in January is going to be hosted by the FM Professional Communicators. If you haven't heard, Cole Mercer is our new FMPC District Chair, and I believe Cole is on here with us today. If you are from the Fargo area and you are interested in reconnecting with those local members, you are encouraged to or welcome to drop a message in the chat directly to Cole. I'm sure he would be happy to hear you, and he would be happy to make sure that you are in the loop on what all they are doing to get that Fargo group up and running again. So 2 more short reminders. Our communications and Cole's waving. Communications contest is open. Heather Severson, our contest chair, has been actively promoting that activity. I don't know about Eastern North Dakota, but I believe it is the only communications contest available to our members in Western North Dakota. So if that is something that interests you, definitely check it out. The early bird deadline is January 17, 2024. After the 17th, the entry fees double. So like the initial entry is $25. Each additional is $5 per entry. Like I said, when it doubles, it goes to $50 for the first, and then I believe $10 for each additional. So definitely check that out now if it's something that interests you. In association with that, it is membership renewal time, and you do have to be a national level member to enter the communications contest. So that's something to keep in mind. If you are going to enter the communications contest and you are not a national level member, you may want to renew at that national level member so you can participate. And I'm going to try to drop a link in the chat to where you would go in to renew that membership. And so if you're interested, like I said, I just dropped in the link that ends in join is where you can go in and do membership renewal. If you have any questions or problems with renewal, Pam Gibb and Tracy Frank are managing our membership responsibility right now. And so reach out to Pam or Tracy and they can answer any questions you might have. So tech reminders, and then I'm turning the stage over to Matt. So we are using Zoom in the meeting format today. I did mention earlier, you do have the ability to unmute yourself if you do want to ask questions that way. You also have the ability with down in the bottom of the screen, and I told Matt, I said, I don't think I've used Zoom since January, since or I had to run a meeting in here. It's or not January, March. It's so if you like me haven't used it in a while, you can run your mouse over the lower half of the screen, and all the tools that are available to you are down in the lower half of the screen, including reactions. So you could raise your hand if you want to do that rather than just unmuting yourself. So let's get to our speaker. So it is no secret that employee dynamics and expectations have shifted since the pandemic. It's more challenging than ever to build a staff community where employees stay and thrive in their careers rather than jump at the next opportunity. Matt Anderson joins us today for our final virtual meeting of 2023, and he's going to share how you can magnetize your teams by harnessing 4 proven principles that forge connection. All right, Matt, it's all yours.
Awesome. Well, great to see you guys. Thanks so much for having me. When Sarah invited me, I was thrilled to put it on my calendar a few months ago when I was doing some work with them at RIO, and really nice to see at least some of your faces and the rest of your names today. But Feliz Navidad, Merry Christmas. If you're like me, it's never too early to start saying that. How many of us are playing the music all day, every day? Anybody else? Anybody else? Raise your physical or virtual hand. I got Bing Crosby classic Christmas playing all day long in my house. And we've had our decorations up since, well, right around Halloween. Once you take the spiders down, the wreaths come up in my house. That's kind of how it is. So love this time of year, and I love it especially that there's no shoveling right now. I don't dream about a white Christmas after last winter. Now I dream of a brown and warm Christmas. Call me new school and not traditional, but man, last year was enough for me. Anyway, what I'm going to do is just take some time. I'm going to share some slides, and I also just put my contact in the comments. I will try to leave time in the end for questions. I know you have a hard stop at the end of the noon hour here. So if you want to ask a question, you don't get to it, or you want to reach out and follow up, if you're like me, the things you wish you said come to you like in the middle of the night the next day or something like that. So if you come up with something that, hey, what about this? Or what if we tried this? Or have you ever done something like that? Or that one slide, I want to ask you something about it. Please note, reach me anytime. I put my website, email, and cell phone up there. And this is an area of passion for me. So I love to chat about it. I'm going to share screen, and you can certainly try to keep the camera view up if you want to not just share at screens, but I think what I'll do is just do the slideshow so you don't have to see a million images here. There we go. Nice and clean. There we go. All right. As you heard in Sarah's intro, and thanks, Sarah, for the facilitating today, by the way. The title today is 4 Steps to Building Real Community at Work. And the focus, again, is just that staff climate culture, relational dynamic that can really easily get overlooked. When you're thinking about, do people have job descriptions? Do they have what they need to do their job? Do they have the right information? Do we have, just the infrastructure in place? Do we have the right equipment? Sometimes, whether it's virtual or in person, this is the last thing we get to. And this is why it's often the lowest score on a lot of staff surveys that we give, including the Gallup one. It's usually the lagging score behind the rest of them, because it's the hardest to prioritize and it's the hardest to shift. And once you develop a culture wherever you are, whether it's a small team or a larger organization, cultures can be stubborn. The ship can be hard to turn because you're dealing with human dynamics, not just the color paint on the walls and a new software program. Just before I dive in, though, just a little intros. I believe that relationships are our most neglected, most powerful resource. That's why I decided to really zero into this topic as I work with organizations, because relationships are the most neglected but most powerful, and they're free. You don't have to buy them. You don't have to invest resources in what you already have. You already have it. It's just a question of how do we leverage that. Also, I know that in the middle of the busy month of December, and in the middle of a busy work day on a Tuesday, sometimes it's hard to jump on a call and put your work down. So I just want to thank you for that. And I want to promise you something, that by the end of this call, you're going to have 5 things you can do today. That's one of my slides at the end, is so given all the stuff we just said, here's 5 things you can do today. So if you want to prepare to take a screenshot of that, I want to make sure that this feels actionable, because when you break from the middle of the workday, you deserve that. You deserve to have something you can do right now, in addition to some of the theoretical stuff that comes up. So that's my promise to you: 5 things you can do right away, not just a neat, touchy-feely talk about relationships. Okay, these are my pivotal relationships. This is my family, my wife in the back there, my son, and my 2 daughters. This is our trip that we took this last year to Paris. And we're all smiling here. It was a long walk up a hot hill to get here. And there was some French being spoken, and it wasn't real French. But we made it, and we took a nice picture together. Had a great memory. But when we see
Matt, I'm
pictures,
going to interrupt really quick. So we still see the original slideshow screen with all the pictures. Can you share the actual slideshow? You might
Yeah, I
have
was
to
going to say the
reshare.
same thing.
really,
Sorry, I'll shut up now.
Thank you, Rhea.
did,
There we go.
weird. Normally you see what I see, and this was what I saw. So thank you for interrupting me. And that sets up the reminder that if I need to be aware of something, whether it's something on my teeth or something like that, just interrupt me again. Thank you. Or if you want to pop something in the chat or raise a hand to ask a question anytime, please do so. Thank you for that welcome interruption. So anyway, these are my pivotal relationships. This is my family. And whenever you see a picture of family, you realize that relationships aren't just the superfluous luxury that we think about when we have time. They are the bedrock of who we are. Even aside from what we do at work, we are a member, first and foremost, of a family. You're a son or a daughter of someone. You're a sibling of someone. You're a friend of someone. And so relationships are really a functional part of our identity, aren't they? Whether or not you want to go the spiritual, religious direction, or the family direction, or just simple identification of who you are in your neighborhood and in your community, relationships are how we come to identify ourselves, and they matter. So I've devoted my life to that. This is a lot of my work has been in the nonprofit world. After I was an educator, a teacher, social studies teacher, I worked in the nonprofit world, and church world, and community work. We started something called the Kindness Initiative at Surprise Church, where I currently serve. And on the left, that is our annual camp called Camp Kindness. And yes, that is me in red tights. Don't be afraid. There's lots of layers under there. But that is an annual event we do for hundreds of kids and lots of young leaders to just mentor kids and teach them that they can have a positive influence on the people in the world around them. You don't have to stay passive. You can have a huge impact, and it's not complicated. We just want to teach you how to do that in simple principles, but also we motivate and inspire people to realize that they have something to offer. Here's the problem. Most people today don't realize they have something to offer. They were taught that if you sit back, you can consume, and that's the best case scenario for your life, is to consume and receive. But when you teach someone of any age that they have something powerful to offer the world around them, that they can influence the world around them, they start to shift and change into a happier person, a more energetic person, a more passionate person. And that's what we do at the Kindness Initiative. We're starting to form clubs at elementary schools in our area where we just mentor kids to take ownership over a kinder school culture. And boy, don't we need that today more than ever. I also do work outside of that nonprofit world. I just gave a TEDx talk this year titled The Shocking Superpower of Relationships. And I do a deep dive into some of what we're finding in the business world about how relationships are shifting healthy organizations in a positive direction, and how when we don't have some of those dynamics at work, then we tend to struggle. Lastly, I wrote a novel that I published about 10 years ago called The Running Mate. And it challenges the reader to look at politics differently from the standpoint of what do we hold in common, and how would presidential elections look differently if we grabbed a hold of the thing that brought us together as Americans first and let unity lead the way. So it envisions a presidential election happening very differently than they tend to right now based upon what we hold in common. And so I just love thinking about how relationships can bring people together. I also have designed a survey for organizations called the Kindness Factor Survey, and do work. And these are some of the organizations I've worked with, in which we kind of, get a score of where we're at related to relationships and kindness, and then kind of make a plan to grow and track longitudinally from there. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in the end, but that's just kind of an intro that talks about the range of things that I've done and a little bit of my experience. But when I work with organizations that approach me or that reach out to me, usually it centers around this question as a starting point: how can we build a great team? Especially now in an era where people aren't all standing in the same space, that are relating through screens, that are at a distance, sometimes out of state or even out of country, that may see each other very rarely in person, if ever in person. One large organization just reached out and said, we don't know what to do because we've never been here before. We used to have 100% of our team right here. And now of our 300 staff, there's 75 to 50 to 75% that are never in the same space. And we don't know how to build community like we used to. We were good when we were all in the same space. Now it feels like we have to up the game a little bit to be intentional, when it just seemed to happen naturally before. And so the good news is that in a hybrid area, which it's not going away. I mean, we're here to stay, with the technology is here to stay. Work from home is here to stay, at least on some measure. But we're getting better and we're learning what works, because humans are still hardwired to be humans in relationship. So that leads to, you know, as I kept fielding that question and thinking of my own experience in the nonprofit sector and working with teams and staffs, I put together this formula called 4 Steps to Building Real Community, that's meant to really apply to any organization or any team that wants to up their game and magnetize their teams. And when I say magnetize, I think of that: how do you electrify your team, make it an exciting team to be a part of, a team that you work from the heart and not just work hard. You can work hard or you can work from the heart, but when you're working from the heart, everything just flows easier, and relationships are critical to that. But also magnetized in the sense of longevity and retention. Transition is very expensive. Replacing staff is very expensive and taxing, and it often leads to losing other staff who just get tired of it. And so it's to build a stronger team, but also to retain the team that we have. And relationships, even in a virtual era, are more important than ever to do that. So we're going to walk through each of these 4. Kind of summarize some things, and then I'm going to see if, you know, whatever questions come up in your head. Jot something down if you want to remember to ask a question in the end, or interrupt me. As we've learned, that can be a very good thing. First of all, whose job is this? Sometimes when I give this presentation, I just start out with this slide and say, don't forget, I'm not talking to the person next to you. In a lot of organizations, like I've said, people approach things like this in a passive way. It's someone else's job. We play hot potato with relationships. The executive might say, I'm just one person. I can't build the relationships. That's got to be you people. Do it. Figure it out. A manager kind of in that middle place might say, well, I'm not on the front lines and I'm not in charge, so I'm going to implement priorities given to me. I'm not in charge of this. And direct reports might say, I don't have any authority. I don't have the ability to say, here's what we're doing. And so it's someone else's job. I already have a job. I was hired to a job and it's not on my job description. So whose job is relationships? And the best analogy I can come up with, because I grew up Lutheran in rural Minnesota where we had potluck dinners, is the potluck dinner. Now, I wish I could have a button to push and there'd be a little fan on your computer that blows out the smell of a potluck dinner. How many of you have ever been to a potluck meal? You know what I'm talking about? There's a smell. It smells like heaven, I think. When all the different casseroles and jellos bleed together, there's a taste and a smell unlike anything else on this human earth, because it just works, and it's always the same. Even if everybody brings a different dish in a different place, it's always the same kind of essence. But in a potluck, somebody has to kind of plan the event and set the table and get the stuff out there, and then everybody else has to bring the entrees and the desserts. And staff community is like that. Management can set the table. They can really do things that blaze a trail, cast a vision, create incentives, but it can't, if you don't have team members bring in the entrees, you just have a bunch of empty tables, systems that don't function. And so everybody has a role to play, and the key is to play your own role well, so that this potluck meal can happen on your team or in your organization. Now, so that's the potluck metaphor. I'm going to go into each one of these individually here. First of all, embrace ownership. Those are 2 thumbs right there pointing up, because we're good at this. passing the buck is a very human thing. We like to say, how about you take charge? How about you take blame? But when we live like this, we are happier. We feel stronger. We feel more in charge of our lives. We feel like we have something to offer when we think, well, what is my role in this? And so always challenge staff to think about personal accountability for better relationships. It's not someone else's job. And job descriptions, and this is a really healthy thing for staff to think through. Job descriptions are a bare minimum. They're not the limit. They're the bare minimum. You cannot put be kind on a job description. You can't measure that. You can't put care about your fellow employees, because relationships come from the heart. And so I have to ask, is my heart in this? Do I want to love my job and the people I work with, or do I just want to do my job description? What kind of life do I want to lead? Do I want to live a bullet point life where I just do tasks, or do I want to work out of this unique essence that has something to offer, a spark to offer the world around me? Is my heart in this? Am I willing to get out of bed and say, what can I do today to make this the best place to be? That's embracing ownership. That's the difference between passive and active ownership. Let's compare the two real quick. If I'm passive, it's someone else's job. If I'm active, I ask, what can I do? Passive says wait for others. Active ownership says I'm going to take initiative. Passive says I'm going to sit back and be the armchair quarterback. I'm going to criticize. The active people say, I'm going to share an idea to fix this problem or to hit that goal. Passives tend to be cynical, see the downside in everything. The active tends to try to encourage others. Passive withholds to protect themselves, to not take risks, to not risk failure. Actives volunteer their strengths because failure is okay. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Passive says they're going to let me know. If I need to know, somebody's going to tell me, someone's going to resend the email. Someone's going to come to my door and make sure I know. Active says, I'm going to ask. I'm going to make sure I'm at the meeting. I'm going to read the email. I'm going to take the notes. I'm going to make sure that I'm in the loop. You can't get more different from these two things. And if you see someone who's passive and see someone who's active, you can almost guarantee that job satisfaction is low on the left side of the slide and retention is high on the right. So we want our people to understand that there is a difference here. It doesn't just automatically happen. It's not just something that you have no control over. You can ask these questions and move to the right here. Think of an organization that I worked with who had a custodian changeover, and the custodian beforehand was very cynical, very negative, did the bare minimum, and they got a new custodian named Mike in this, and it was probably a 40 to 50 office complex where there was individual offices. And Mike made one key change when he took over, because he had some flexibility about how he did his job, when he cleaned the bathrooms. Instead of cleaning the bathrooms during the day and putting the signs out, and so nobody can go to the bathroom, and it was just like awkward and frustrating, and you got to hold it and wait for Mike to get done cleaning the bathroom, and then doing garbages after 5 o'clock after people would leave, Mike did garbages during the day, so that every office he went into said, hey, can I take your trash? He would strike up a brief conversation and touch base just to do some caring thing. And before you knew it, people loved these garbage breaks even more than they loved their bathroom breaks, which they could now take because he wasn't cleaning the bathrooms and blocking them off during the day. Mike took personal ownership over the relationships by changing how he did his schedule enough to connect individually with every person in every office at least once a week. And it was as simple as doing the garbage before 5. That's an example of just taking ownership over what I can do. Leads to the second category, which is find your niche. If you're not a custodian, either that's the only option or there's an option that fits who you are. Everyone has a unique niche they can play. And the good news is you don't have to do an impression of someone else. If you're an extrovert, you don't have to pretend to be an introvert. If you're an introvert, you don't have to pretend to be an extrovert. If you're a boss, you don't have to pretend to be everybody's buddy in the next door office and a direct report. You can play your role with your strengths in a unique way. And I love telling the story of Jim. Jim was a professional introvert. He would be the guy staring at his shoes around the water cooler without a ton of things to say. But when he wanted to let someone know that he cared, when he wanted to encourage someone, when he wanted to say thank you, he would go back to his cube and he would write a note on his kind of fancy personal stationery. And whenever anybody on staff got a note from Jim, it was an event. There would be like they used to have the intercom things on phones. I don't know if they still use those in most offices, but like Barb's opening a note from Jim, everybody would put down what they're doing and run to Barb's office, and Barb would open Jim's note and read. It was either poetry or just flowery prose. And it was always an event because he had such a beautiful way with words. He took some skill that he didn't even necessarily need to do his job, but he made his job different and better. He made the staff different and better simply by offering that part of himself, which he could have kept separate and private, but he offered it to make his team better and build relationships in a way that just came from the heart. Writing flowery poems to coworkers was not on Jim's job description. He did it just because he cared. He found his unique niche. Same with Cindy. Cindy is on my current team. Cindy's in her late 50s, and she quickly established herself as the gal who cares. She just has a massive heart. And she would gravitate towards people who were going through difficult things. And eventually we realized that, people can volunteer their strengths in all kinds of different ways. Somebody likes to facilitate meetings or send out reminders. Like, what if we ask Cindy to be our care guru that just makes sure everybody on our team gets cared for, gets attention when they need it, gets love and support when they need it, especially if they might be ashamed to share it in some meeting. And so we asked her, and she jumped at the chance to just coordinate the rest of us and help all the rest of us when a need arises. And she has such an intuitive sense. She tends to know when to reach out to someone to say, how are you doing? What's going on in your life? And how can we help you? They'll tell Cindy. And that allows the rest of us to, through Cindy, care for this, whatever the person or the need is on our team. So here's one thing that Cindy oversees right now at our Surprise organization called Surprise. And we have this list of staff on the left, and we just created we call it a staff celebrations database. We just said, hey, everybody, here's the link. Go in there and just tell us the things you love. Tell us your key dates. When did you start working here? When's your birthday? When's your wedding anniversary? Where's your favorite restaurants, hobbies, candies? And so whenever one of those key dates come up, or if we just want to say thank you, we go on there and we find out what makes them tick. We find out what they like, and we can send them a gift card or tease them about their favorite team losing or whatever. Now, she organizes this to make sure that the rest of us, don't forget so-and-so's birthday here, come and sign the card. And then they get the card from all of us. She helps us remember this because she's got a heart for it. And it makes a huge difference to people on our teams. Here's the thing that people need to realize. That you weren't hired because you are one identical cog in the machine. You're hired because you're unique. So find a unique way to help build community that gets you out of bed in the morning, that makes work fun, that matches your strengths and passions. Everybody can do it. Managers can do it by maybe facilitating. If they're not the visionary, you can try to facilitate better relationships, try to set up environments and plans and schedules. You can be a problem solver. You can try to organize people to care for one another like Cindy did, or you can try to structure your team to build relationships. You can prioritize relationship time, even if that's not a high strength of yours in terms of building relationships. A direct report can say, hey, I want to help with that. I want to build a schedule where we might, like our staff, like the last Thursday of the month, we go to a coffee shop or a bar and have a beverage and just talk about the last month and celebrate. Some people are passionate about relationships and they'll volunteer their strengths to do that, or to have compassion and care for people on the staff that are in need or in medical situations. Some people like organizing social activities. Some people just like to organize, period. And people can find their unique niche. And as that happens, more people see the different varieties. It can become sort of infectious. A lot of organizations use the colors system for strengths. And sometimes I'll show slides like this to say, okay, so if you're agreeing, here's some things you can do to try to find ways for your staff to develop systems of caring for one another, of reminding each other things that are important, of celebrating and affirming one another. But based on your unique personality, it looks very, very different. Those oranges are the extroverts. They facilitate playtime, the life of the party. They can come up with spontaneous ideas versus the blues, the empaths. They get a sense that someone's in need and they'll reach out. This overall, if you have the wider spread of people, it makes a healthier team and people can contribute in different ways. So finding your unique niche can be really life-giving for people when they realize they don't have to become someone else. Third, this might be my favorite one. Remember. Think about that word for a minute. When you remember something, you just call it back to mind. But the root of it is member. We are relational beings in a primary way. That means we are each members of something. First, members of a family, then community, society, and you're a member of a staff. That's a functional identity that helps build a sense of self and cohesion. And sometimes people become dismembered or disconnected. The word we use in the business world is disengaged. The Gallup survey that many of us use measures disengagement. And the longer an employee is disengaged and the higher percentage of your staff in which employees are disengaged, it can spell real challenges. So we want engagement. But what if it isn't just an improvement plan? What if it isn't just a punitive intervention, a last chance? What if becoming engaged starts with the heart? Steve was disengaged, a member of our team who you just knew was going through the motions, showed up a little later to every meeting, left as the first one to leave, just quieter, not creative, not thinking of solutions, bare minimum kind of situation, and not a great attitude. You just sense that the body language just seemed like he was on the way out. Something happened with one of his children. I forget the medical situation, but this young boy had to go to the hospital for a multi-day stay. It was serious enough so that he and his wife had to really rotate and be there all the time. And it was touch and go for a while. And once they made it through the emergency part, there was still the maintenance of like, how do we do this? And this is hard and stressful and it's expensive. And how do we do our jobs, raise our other kids? And we have a care coordinator. And so she was able to reach out and say, hey, what's going on? How can we help? And finally was able to prod the information out of him. Like, why do you need to know? I'm going to keep this private. His first instinct, like many staff people's first instinct, is if I have a personal issue, if I have a medical issue, it's none of my peers' darn business. It's my business. Leave me alone. Don't talk about it. But if there's a relational climate that's established where you get to be human, you're going to tell someone, hey, this is what's going on. This is why I need to take some vacation time or sick time. And once we heard about it, we organized a schedule where we were going to be dropping off meals at their houses and helping with their kids, rides and babysitting, so that they could both be there when they needed to, so they could have some breaks, so that they didn't have to cook every day. And for several weeks, they had hot meals and childcare help week after week while they walked through a really difficult time. And it absolutely transformed Steve's demeanor and countenance when he came back. He came back, he was like a wide-eyed child, like, wow, what just happened? It was almost like his first day on the job, because he realized that he was not just a cog in the machine, that he was a cared about person. And it changed the way he worked. He worked from the heart, not just the bare minimum. He also, because he was remembered, he was brought back on the team, he started to pay it forward. And he started to look for ways to do that to others. And now almost anytime one of these opportunities comes up, he is one of the first ones to sign up to bring meals, one of the first ones to sign up to do it for other people. Because once you've experienced it, you want to share it. This can, remembering people, a situation like this can come up and you can say, okay, propose ideas, folks. What do you think? How can we best care for Steve? And people, based on their strengths, someone might research a good app to make sure that we can schedule organize a meal plan. Someone might just have an intuitive sense that Steve needs encouragement and check in with him. Someone might want to organize something spontaneous and fun. Someone else who's a gold, might want to just make sure that it remains a priority long term, so people can work together based on their hardwiring in a relational context, in a unique need situation. And like I said, Steve began to pay it forward. Once he received this, once he was remembered, now he felt like, since he's a member of something and he's experienced what it feels like to be cared for in this way, he had something that he could offer and pass on and pay forward, because we can't give what we don't have. And so if you just put on the job description, try to build a caring staff, but you don't build a caring staff, no one can give what they don't have. We have to model and foster and forge this kind of community in order for people to say, okay, I get it. Now I'm going to do it. And oftentimes that's the best thing we can do as managers, as communication directors, as HR directors, is how can I give people a picture of what this looks like? And sometimes you have to steal stories from other organizations because you don't have any of your own yet. Until you start having your own, you can say, look what so-and-so did, look what so-and-so did. Or I do like mid-year follow-ups after events where we get together and talk about each of these 4 variables. And I say, come on up here, fill out a little yellow Post-it note and put it next to the whiteboard, next to one of these 4 variables that you saw happen in the last 6 months. And to watch people write out, someone did this for me by name, and put them up there. And it's yellow paper everywhere. It's really a powerful thing because it's creating and establishing a culture. We can't give what we don't have. Steal stories and share them until you have your own, and then celebrate them like crazy when you do. Last one, being a real friend. Now, most people who take this Gallup staff survey roll their eyes when they get the question, I have a best friend at work, right? Whether it's just a tough-minded dude who likes Harleys, or just an efficient gal who's like, I do my job here. I don't think about best friends here. Whatever. It's a reality in which this question can seem sort of irrelevant. Like, who cares? And we have sometimes a false dichotomy between friendships and work that don't help in a really, real way. It doesn't help to think of work that way. Boundaries are good, but carving out relationships, not so good. And we can measure this. We know this is true because 3/4 of American workers who have a close friend at work report that relationship is one of the primary reasons they are still here. A primary reason why they don't find a better paying job, find a more convenient fit, a different situation. Now, certainly we want other reasons for them to stay, but this is one that might get someone through that critical, punctual moment in which they're having a conflict, and it might be easier to pull the ripcord and just leave, where they don't necessarily want to, wait for that annual review. It's a little stressful, and I'm not sure I want to push through this hard season. A real solid relationship, or more than one, is the glue that can hold a team together through difficult times. 3/4 of people who have those relationships say, that's why I stay. So it's wise to pay attention to it. Here's what real friends at work do. This is not doing each other's nails and having sleepovers. This is not, we have to make donuts together and lefse every Thanksgiving. This is real functional. Good friends simply help us at work in a way that bad friends don't. Good friends pour water on problems rather than gasoline. So if you have a problem with another coworker and you go to your friend and say, you'll never guess what so-and-so said. One way to pour gasoline on us. Are you kidding me? Hey, guys, come over here, listen to this. And now 4 people know, and they're mad. Maybe some emails go around. Maybe there's some gossip in the break room or in a chat room. And all of a sudden it's a complicated conflict. But a best friend, a good friend, says, I think you need to go talk to them about that and just let them know. They probably didn't even mean it. But you need to let them know that it made things difficult for you just so they don't keep doing it. Just talk to them. And if you want, I'll even go with you because I want to see you both happy. Good friends help us see positive options when we might, in our emotional moment, see only negative ones. We might be tempted to just react. Good friends show concern for us as human beings, and we feel like we matter outside of work. When we're a good friend, we help people feel like they matter apart from their work product. Good friends are eager to collaborate. This may not be in my job description, and I might have a full plate of work today, but sure, I can pop by that meeting and just give you some ideas. I can take a look at and proofread that with a fresh set of eyes, just to give you my opinion. I'm happy to help because I'm a friend, and that's what friends do. I'm not just a competitive coworker. All this is to say, real friends at work are not transactional. If you work with someone who is only out for themselves, they might help you if it benefits them, but that only leads to more of the feeling that I am a cog in the machine. Good friends simply offer from the heart kindness and gratitude and assistance and support and good advice because they want to be a good friend and they care. And that is pivotal. I had a good friend at work that was actually directly reporting to me, Brian, his name is, and he's since moved down to Texas, works in the energy industry, but at the time he was reporting to me, and I had to let one of his coworkers go because of a performance and a character issue that it just wasn't going to get fixed. And it was time, and everyone sensed it for this person to find a better situation. And I don't like letting people go, and I try everything every time to find a better way forward. But sometimes it's a best case scenario for everyone involved, and down the road, everybody sees that. I had to let this person go, and it was one of the first times I ever had to do it. Sleepless nights led to the conversation. And I was in my room, literally with tears in my eyes, just sitting there feeling pretty alone, because sometimes as a manager or boss, you can feel really lonely in those moments. Well, for whatever reason, this guy felt like he wasn't just there to do his job. Got a cup of coffee, and he walked into my room, set it down on my desk, sat down in the chair, shut my door, and asked how I was doing, and listened to me sob. And I was his boss. Didn't tell him anything that was boundary violation or inappropriate professionally, but he just wanted me to know that he knew it was hard, and he understood, and he thought I did a good job. That was a real friend. And at that point, I didn't need another direct report. I needed a friend. I needed a human being to recognize the human pain. Tim brought beer. After a colleague and I went through a tough time, he gave me a call and like, man, that was a tough meeting. Yeah, sure was. I just brewed some beer. You want me to bring it by? Sure. He just brought it by just to chat, just to hang out. Those are just two simple moments where people recognize that this is a moment where we could just do it and move on, or we could do it and recognize the human dynamic at work and be a real friend. And they did. They came through. And man, I want to be that for others. And when people collectively do that more often, things seem to change. Now, as I walk through these for organizations, often I'll say, let's try to help your team build a plan. Give them a template and give them some documents they can kind of work on this, give them some time and some space. And just to ask a couple questions and do some writing in each of these areas. I'll say, what am I doing already in these areas? Because there's always stuff that's already happening. We need to celebrate what's already happening if we want to then also add to it. Don't just look to add, look to celebrate what you do. Because sometimes a framework like this leads you to more appreciate one another and to thank one another for what already happens. It sometimes gives you language to be appreciative and grateful. Number two, what should I start doing? Not what can he do or she do or they do, but what can I do in each of these areas from my unique perspective, with my unique skills? And then finally, what tools or systems would help? So again, it's not someone else's job, but I've already talked about what I can do or keep doing. What sort of tools would help from the organizational standpoint? Software, time, space, budget, that would really assist in that effort. So that's sort of how I put these things to use with organizations, and that's how we sort of empower individuals to now start thinking themselves, and then we'll often plan a follow-up to celebrate, not to intervene in a negative way, but to celebrate the progress made. And it really helps to come back to these things, because anything you do once, and people realize that it's not really going to matter. But anything you follow up on and come back to, it communicates that it's a priority. Now, I promised I'd come back to this. I've designed a survey that if you want to do it, I would give it to anyone here for free, just to give you a score of the kindness factor for your organizations. I could just give you a link. You could take it and then just give you your results. Say, hey, here's your score. It can be kind of a neat barometer to use to be able to say, where are we at relationally? Yeah, we got that one question on the Gallup survey, but like we want a deeper dive. And the kindness survey is meant to go into 6 different variables, 12 questions to help team members express how they're experiencing your organization from a relational or kindness perspective. Just a quick little summary of that. There's 2 separate categories, 2 separate areas that are measured. Well, let's go through them, because when you talk about being relational and kind, sometimes you get afraid of, well, where's there going to be accountability? And so every relational effort you have needs both guardrails and grace. We measure the guardrails first. Is there clarity of expectations? Because accountability matters still, right? And we can actually measure how clear are we? Are there unstated expectations? Do people feel like they can ask when things are unclear? If we can't, we're not healthy and we're not kind. Brene Brown said, clarity is kindness. Secondly, anti-threatening accountability. We want fearless ownership in our organizations. When we can't do something, when we fail to do something, we don't want people afraid to admit it, afraid to identify mistakes or errors or needs or gaps. We want people to know that in this organization, we grow through failure. We can measure how strongly people feel right now, and then we can establish steps that help us to be more resilient when it comes to learning through failure and growing through failure. There are some organizations that commit to never firing someone because of a performance issue, but they'll only create performance plans and adaptations and shifting job responsibilities because they want to create a culture where people are not afraid to fail and admit, I don't know how to do this very well. I need somebody else to work with me while I do this because I'm better at this. And if you're not afraid to fail or admit limits, you can be a strong organization. Well, we can measure that. Third, minimalistic conflict resolution. Like we said earlier, involving as few people as possible. Most of us have a culture that we either inflame or de-escalate conflict. We solve rather than inflame problems. And we can measure that. We can measure how staff feel. We can measure how staff appear to one another. And it's very helpful to get the picture of that so we know how to grow. That's the guardrails. That's kind of like protecting the staff culture. And then the second set of 3 that we measure in the survey is called grace. Just how do we pour kindness and just invest in people and love people? And that comes through 3 things that we can measure. Affirmation. How often, how well do we affirm one another? We want to have an affirmation addiction in our organizations. We want a relentless commitment to affirmation, daily rhythms to appreciate. We want to have creative ownership. We want a culture where people volunteer their traits, their strengths to build a better work family, work community. We want people working from the heart. We can measure these things. And people will share how they see themselves, and they can share how they see others. And finally, holistic compassion. This is that caring for people outside of work. This is that real friend variable. We want to embrace our peers, not transactionally, not because you benefit me, not because of just work product, but because you are a whole person and we are humans. We care beyond work here. You're allowed to be human here. We can measure how committed people are on our teams to doing these things. And so the kindness survey is intended to do that. But I promised you this. I promised you 5 things you can do today to just take one step forward. Now, you don't have to do all 5. You can pick one if you want to, but here's 5 things you can do. Number 1, celebrate the wins each weekly meeting. I am passionate about this. This is the best change we ever made in my team. Whenever you do a weekly staff meeting, here's my challenge to you. Try this. Start with wins. What great thing happened in terms of our work together in the last week? Come ready to share your wins. We had our staff meeting yesterday. Everybody came with 2 wins. Like, this is a 2-win week, man. And by the time you're done, you're going to find out how much work actually got done. This is the crazy part about sharing wins and affirmations. It does the work. I was afraid because I'm a little bit relationally challenged, which is ironic because I'm talking about it, but and I'm a little bit more of a doer. And so I was afraid that we were going to miss our agenda because we spend too much time on wins. But what I found was just the opposite. We got our agenda done better than we otherwise did when it was just a raw agenda, calling out people for who hadn't done things, saying we still need this, who's going to cover that task. When you're starting from the standpoint of wins, your agenda tends to come up because the wins are about what you're doing. It just comes up through a different lens and a different filter by people tattling in a good way on each other, people bragging on their teams, people celebrating what the goal was accomplished that you were trying to do last week, and mentioning, oh yeah, I still have to do this and who can help me with that, but it's in the context of affirmation. And we've learned that companies save billions every year related to turnover alone when they create a culture of affirmation. Appoint a care captain, like I said, like Cindy, appoint a care captain, somebody who just wants to volunteer to make sure this people get cared for. Build that staff celebrations grid. If you'd like to see a copy of it, I'd be happy to email it to you to how to build it out so that people know the key dates and preferences of people to celebrate. Try Meal Train. That is a tool for just scheduling meals. You can say, hey, you're in need, you're in the hospital, we'll bring your family meals. Use the website called Meal Train to schedule it and then invite people to sign up to bring a meal. And then, like I said, you can take the kindness factor survey if you want to measure your staff in terms of their relational dynamics that we walked through here today. So here's contact, some of the topics I've tended to do in the past. And, if I can send, anything through email through Sarah, if you guys kind of want any follow-up or summaries or the slide deck from today. But I promised I would also end with any questions. And so, need that right now. So any questions, just as we have our last few minutes? I know we have a 1 o'clock ending here, of things that came up or things you just wanted to highlight or go a little bit deeper into today.
So I don't see anything in the chat or hand just raised, but feel free to unmute yourselves or raise your hands or chat or whatever. I will say, you guys probably saw our agency name on the list there. We had Matt come in and present to our staff the end of October. And I work with a lot of very analytical people, surprise, surprise, at the retirement and investment office. And they're numbers people. They're not always feelings people. And I think there was a lot of good reminders in Matt's presentation about just like, not just even the people that you're working with, but your relationship with your family members as well, thinking about what's important to them and keeping those things in mind when you're asking them for favors. We don't want to manipulate them, but obviously it's we all like to be remembered. And when somebody shoots us a message and wishes us a happy birthday, or congratulates us because our team won or because we got some award or something, so it would say definitely resonated with our staff, and so it was much appreciated. So
thanks, Sarah. Thank you. Anybody, as you're thinking of this,
Freya's got a question.
Oh, go ahead. I'll
That's okay. Well, my question is, we do have a birthday calendar, but what other celebrations would you consider trying to bring everybody on board with?
Awesome. Great question. And that staff celebrations grid, there were things like employment anniversary. Hey, you've been here this is your 6th year. If someone's been there for 6 years and someone remembers and they get clapped for at a meeting or a special gift, I mean, think of the message that sends. They feel like, wow, you remembered me. I matter here. It gives the staff a chance to show them love and affirmation and appreciation. And it lets all the newbies know, as well as everybody else, that if I stay here, I will be valued continuously. So staff anniversaries, employment anniversaries, personal anniversaries, like a lot of times, if you have a smaller staff, I like sending a gift card or leaving a gift card where I know, hey, it's your anniversary, your wedding anniversary. Where are you going to go eat tonight? Oh, we're going to go over to the Five Guys, or we're going to go over to Texas Roadhouse. And I'll go over there and I'll leave $20 for them and have the waiter bring it to the table. And people just feel really touched when you remember them. So any date, employment anniversary, I mean, again, if you're a smaller team and you can really keep track of things, sometimes, things like kids' birthdays or graduations, that tends to come up through relational conversation rather than something you can put on a. But anything good that happens in their life that the team can celebrate counts. But those are a few things that we can kind of schedule and have on a calendar year in and year out. So those were the few things that just kind of jumped to the front of my mind.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other ones come to mind, guys? I love this visual here of sitting in a. Oh, this is awesome.
I think it's supposed to be a classroom.
Yeah,
I will mention too, we did start meetings with wins, and I think that is a good one as well, because as Matt said, you can check a lot of things off of your agenda for the meeting just by having everyone go around and talk about their wins.
Yeah. Another question came up, Betty. You're right. The survey is not on my website just as like a take it thing. It's something, if you want to send me an email, what I can do would be I like to give a personalized survey. As Sarah can tell you, with our IO, what we did was we cross-sectioned it by department, right? And so I designed the survey for them to be able to tell me, are you virtual, and what percentage virtual you are, and what department you're working in. And then the cool thing about that is that when we get the results, we can analyze it by comparatively looking at people who are virtual versus not, people who are in this department versus that, and we can compare that to the mean and the average of the overall organization. So if there is an issue in one pocket relationally, it tends to raise it up. One thing I noted with one organization was that their virtual employees had less conflict than their day-to-day. Well, that kind of is explainable, right? Like, we don't fight because we're not in the same space very often, and people who are on site tend to have more conflict. So they knew that they have to invest a little bit more time and effort in conflict resolution with people who are on site. Now, when you do that, you tend to have better relationships long-term because you work through things that you don't get a chance to work through if the conflict doesn't come up. So it's not a bad thing. But that survey then gave them a chance to kind of lean into that variable a little bit more. So, and then they could also justify it to the staff, like, hey, here's what you guys told us. We're doing this because of what you said you'd like to grow in, and thank you for your honesty. Now we're going to do some things that honor that and respond to it. So if you just send the email pma2435 at pma2435@gmail.com, and I'll send like my bio page to Sarah to send out, just so you can reach me anytime. I can send you a link of a personalized survey if you want to do it together. And then there's some intro stuff I just would want you to know before you just throw it out there, and I can kind of help you set it up. We had a really, like, we did it at Rio, we had a super high percentage of people take it because of, I think, in part, how Sarah did a great job setting it up. So I like to share best practices, in terms of that too. Make it worth your time.
Matt, we also had a request for your slide deck, and I will add that our session today was recorded, and so I will get that onto our organization's Zoom or
Awesome.
YouTube account as well. So I mean, if you want to go back and review the content, but yeah, if that's okay with you, Matt, if you can send your slides maybe as a PDF, then Pam is my web guru, and when she posts the video to our website, she can post a link to those slides as well.
Then that, I'll send the one pager, the slide deck is a PDF. And just a reminder, you're not bothering me. So if you want to reach out, even if it's just a follow-up question, I'm not going to bill you. I love talking about this stuff. It's a passion for me. And I love, serving organizations that just are trying to harness what I said is a superpower that we often don't use of relationships. And so if there's any way that you can think of where we can unlock that power, let me know, and I'd love to help however I can. I'm just grateful for the chance to connect with you guys today, and I'm available to help however I can. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Okay, it's a little bit after 1, so we're going to let everybody go. And again, thank you, Matt. We appreciate you, and I see some nice compliments in the chat. And so thank you, everyone. I don't think we have any more events before Christmas. So happy holidays, Merry Christmas to everyone, and we will see you again in January.
Bye, guys.